And good evening and welcome to City Focus. I'm Marty Olsen, your host, and tonight I am absolutely delighted. I've got a brand new guest, and it's a woman who I've admired for years. She's a terrific writer for the day in the sports department, and Vickie Fulkerson, I want to say thank you for carving out an hour to be on the program. And it's funny, our paths crossed a handful of months ago at Mr. G's, where everybody knows your name. And you had just been, you had a recent promotion at the day, where now you're the sports editor, and I inquired whether you'd be available to do what you're doing right this moment. And you agreed, and we've finally had a chance to connect. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And I'm really, folks, she's a wonderful talent. She's a local woman who grew up in Stonington, went to Stonington High, and she played softball in high school. Do you play any other sports, or?
Not in high school. A little bit of dabbling in basketball in junior high, but I don't have any depth perception. So my plateau was not very high in sports.
But then you went on to BU. Now, what was your interest in going up to Beantown? Was it Boston itself, or was it BU offer a program that you were interested in?
I majored in journalism. They have an outstanding College of Communication, so it's one of the places I was looking at. I also applied and got accepted at Syracuse, and they have a great school of communication. Also, my mom and dad and I drove up to Syracuse for the day for like an orientation or like a visitors, prospective students day. And I cried the whole way home because it's so far away. I'm like, I didn't want to be that far away. Like, this is too far. And then we went to Boston to do the same kind of thing, like do a visit. And we were on the subway riding around Boston, and I was like, oh, I could do this for 4 years. This is kind of cool. And also, my dorm was like now when I go to Fenway Park, sometimes I can park on the street at BU. They have parking meters. You can put some quarters in. So instead of paying like $50 to go to Fenway, you can go put like $5 worth of quarters in and park there and walk over to Fenway. So like if Jim Rice homered, I could hear it if my window was open, I could hear it in my room at Boston. So that was a perk. I was a freshman in 1986 when they played the Mets in the World Series.
Oh, wow.
So I went and one of the first things I did in Boston was sleep outside Fenway Park to get World Series tickets.
Wow.
So it was kind of a bonus.
And I inquired before we went on the air if you were much of a hockey buff, because BU is certainly known for a high-powered, nationally prominent hocky program, and I gather that that kind of grew on you during your tenure with the Terriers.
Yeah, you learn about it when you're there, and they were, of course, very good when I was there. And they play in the Bean Pot every year, and I was also in the pep band. So I worked at the school paper, the Daily Free Press, but I was also in the pep band. So I went to a lot of hockey games to play in the pep band, including the Bean Pot, which was at the old Boston Garden. So you get to learn like all the kind of rhythms of hockey. Like you get to yell at the opposing goalie and call him a sieve and stuff like that.
Well, as I recall, going to BU games and Beanpot games, and the BU student section stands and kind of chants and stomps almost the entire game. And every chant always seemed to end with "BC sucks."
Yeah, There's a certain song that, as in the pep band, they wouldn't let us play. The one that goes ba 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 da da. Like we're not allowed to play that because it ended in some profanities toward BC. And it doesn't matter like who you were playing. It just was always directed at BC.
Yeah.
Like the Yankees and the Red Sox, kind of.
So that was, I think that's kind of fun, and that rivalry certainly is terrific. You know, the ComAv rivalry.
Yeah.
I spent a little time as a younger fellow at Northeastern. I didn't finish there, but they were the poor stepchild of the Boston athletics and hockey.
Yeah, the bean plant. So an interesting note, Mike Tomorrow, who's also on the staff, the sports staff at the Day, he's the assistant sports editor, went to BC at the same time that I was at BU. We're exactly the same age. So our careers paralleled each other at the two schools. And we actually were at some of the same games at the same time, but we didn't know each other then or anything. But like later on, like we can kind of compare notes, like which restaurants did you frequent, or like which Red Sox games, or we were there at the same time. So
God, if I recall, the Father's 2 was somewhere around BU.
I'm not sure about that.
Well, it was once upon a time. And the cask was just opened up over by Fenway. There was a cask over by Northeastern on Huntington Avenue.
Yeah, yeah.
But the good old days. And,
definitely.
And being in that environment, it was a lot of fun. And Boston is certainly a major professional sports town.
Yes.
I wish that the news media would give the colleges a little bit more, coverage, but they don't. I guess they don't feel there's a market for it.
Yeah, that's why it's hard to recruit to those schools like BU. I don't know. BU I think always had trouble recruiting. It's not like it's more of like a professional sports town. Yeah, I think.
Now, had BU dropped football by the time you got there? John Silbers was president when that happened.
I think they had football when I started there, but maybe not when I finished. Chris Palmer was the BU football coach when I first started, and he's a Connecticut guy. But I don't think they had it when I left. And then baseball, it's just mostly a hockey. And Mike Jarvis coached the men's basketball team.
Yeah, well, he coached Ewing in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, Northeastern dropped football too, but it's been a while now. But it was, I think, after BU had dropped football. Yeah. So when you got through with school, did you just apply to the Day, or did you apply to multiple periodicals and the Day hired you?
Multiple periodicals, I would say. I interned at the Hartford Courant when I was in college in their sports department, and I applied. I don't know. I had been to visit a friend in Milwaukee, and I think I applied to the Milwaukee Sentinel, and I applied a bunch of places, Associated Press, the Bulletin, I don't know. I applied everywhere, but the Day is my hometown paper, and they had a couple openings. Gavin Keefe and I got hired at the same time in August of 1990. He worked at a publication in Rhode Island previously, but we got hired at the Day at the same time, and I was 21 when I got hired.
So right out of college, you walked off one side of the stage and into the Day.
Yeah, it was. I got hired at the Day in August that year, so I was off like kind of the whole summer, wondering what I was going to do with myself, kind of. But then I applied at the Day and got hired in August.
Now, when you got involved with writing, have you always had this passion for sports? I mean, or did you fall into sports? Did you have an interest in politics or other things that the newspapers report on?
I think mostly sports. I interned at the Courant in their sports department. I was the sports editor in college at the Daily Free Press. I covered the women's basketball team and the field hockey team, and played softball at BU. So I've just mostly done sports. I would say I interned at the Westerly Sun one year, and I did some non-sports reporting. I did like some kind of like zoning meeting one time, and I covered like the Washington County Fair one time, and got to meet like Kitty Wells, like the old country singer. But like, you know, not that I couldn't like grasp it or anything, but I gravitated mostly towards sports. I've always been a big baseball fan, mostly baseball.
Now, when you were hired by the day,
Yes.
what was your entree into the paper in the sports department? Now, you mentioned Jack Cruz, and he was an old salt who worked at the day for a long, long time, and he, if I'm not mistaken, also had close ties to the academy.
Yeah, he's in the Coast Guard Hall of Fame. He worked at the day for something like 60 years. And when I first started, he was writing a column called "Remember When," he called it. So he would call my house, like, you remember, like the landline.
Yeah, well, I actually still have one.
Yeah, and like our yellow kitchen in Stonington. I lived with my parents, and my mom, like sometimes I wasn't there, and my mom would answer the phone, and Jack would be like, "I want to tell you about my remembrance piece for this week," and he would tell my mom like all about it, and I'd get home, she'd be like, "Jack called." Like, "I'm sorry." She's like, "No, it was fine." But the day just has always been an outstanding place to work. Like, we look where we are. We're in between Boston and New York. Well, the Mohegan Sun wasn't here then, but like we have professional women's basketball. We have Rajai Davis, from New London, playing Major League Baseball. If we want to go write an article about him, we can get a credential at Fenway Park and go write about Rajai Davis. We have great colleges, Coast Guard, UConn, great high schools, state champions in a lot of sports since I've been here, and I think it's a perfect place. There's I have a list of things that I want to write about. There's never not a list. So,
do you have a favorite? I mean, whether it be high school or college or professional, or does it ebb and flow with the success of a particular team at a given point in time? It's hard just because this is our community and we know the people so well. Like, we get to know the coaches. Like, it's hard when you have a team that's playing for a state championship. Like, and you just see the joy. When the kids and the coaches get to win a state championship. So, like, for the high schools I'm talking about, like there's been a couple, like through the years, like one time early on in my career, East Lyme and Ledyard softball won the state championship on the same day, and I got to cover both in the same day. Oh, wow!
And Judy Beebe at East Lyme, this is going to be her 53rd season, I think. She started the program at East Lyme, and she's still there. So when you see people, like, it means so much to them when you see people have success. New London girls basketball with India Pagan, who went on to play for Puerto Rico in the Olympics.
That's exciting.
Twice so far, and they won the state championship at Mohegan Sun and got voted #1 in the state poll that year. In 2017, I think, was India's senior year. That was exciting, and it's just like, it brings so much joy to the community and to the kids. And then I always enjoy covering cross country. We've had so many great, or cross country and track, so many great athletes come through the years. The ECC cross country championship is tomorrow, so that's why I have cross country on the brain, because I just wrote a big preview for it. So, but I really, you like to see the success of the local people, and sometimes, like, seniors, and they've never gotten to have the success before. Like, right now, the Ledyard girls cross country team has a freshman as its #1 runner. So it's just, I don't know. There's always something that you could be having like a utterly horrible day, and everything could go wrong, and you go to cover a high school game and you talk to the kids, and everything seems to be better, like in better perspective, because it's just the best part is to get to go talk to people.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you're not doing columns like Tomorrow does. Was that a fair assessment?
Yes, that's a fair, yeah. I mean, I could if I wanted, but he's our columnist, so he would write more columns. But I have in the past, like, written, a few
But
here
he's
and
a
there.
regular.
Yeah, he's the columnist, yeah.
Where you and Mr. Keefe are out covering events and writing about them and writing about the participants and the coaches and things of that nature.
Yeah. I could, though, if I had like a strong opinion about something, like I could write a column if I wanted to. Like I have in the past, Like I wrote about, my mom passed away from MS in 2007, and every year on what would have been her birthday, I go to see the Red Sox play, and I've written about that before. How I went to.
Was she a big fan?
She was a Red Sox fan, yeah, and she couldn't do a lot of stuff that she used to do in her life, like read so she just watched TV. So she would go from baseball season over the summer, and then to UConn men and women's basketball, but like a lot of women's games. So she would call me at the office, and she would be like, "Oh, guess what Jerry and Remy said?" And then she switched in the winter to, "Guess what Megan said?" Megan Patterson Kumo, and I'd be like, "Yeah, I know, like I work at a newspaper," but she always like wanted to tell me what they said. But like I wrote a column one year about, so I go to the game wherever it is on her birthday, no matter what. So one year was Tampa, which Tropicana Field. The roof just blew off the other day. But like, so everybody kind of is down on that field. Like it's like just kind of like, climate controlled. But I like it because it was like something that I did to honor her, and they have cowbells, and I don't know. There's like good places to park. They have a big parking lot. It was like $5 to park. Like you can't.
I've been there once. I saw the Red Sox play there. It's got to be pushing 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
But, I didn't find it to be quite as repugnant as others.
Yeah, I didn't either.
But
nice and air conditioned.
What I found interesting at that particular venue, though, is you go in the pro shop and there's more Yankee and Red Sox stuff than there is Tampa stuff. So if you can't find the gear of your choice in New York or Boston, go to Tampa.
Yeah. Did you know, by the way, that as a complete aside, you can't pay for anything in cash at a Major League Stadium anymore. You have to have a card.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they don't accept cash at any of the gift shops or any of the concession stands. You have to have a credit or debit card.
Well, that's good to know.
For future reference.
Well, I know there's some local restaurants actually that are no cash.
Huh.
On the waterfront comes to mind quickly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, I'm a cash person.
Well, you better carry at least a card that you haven't maxed out. Well, that's interesting. Now, have you found, you've been doing this now for 30 plus years. There's got to have been involvement of the industry itself, women in sports, women in reporting sports. I don't want to stereotype, but when you started, were you given primarily girls or women's things to cover, or were you given a broad section of the sports pie?
But you make it sound like that women's sports are a bad thing to cover.
Not at all.
Because I think it's an honor. Like to go cover the UConn women's basketball team is an honor. I've been to 12 Final Fours.
Well, that's...
and to bring the coverage to field hockey or the coverage to girls swimming that it didn't get before I came to the paper, maybe. So that's an honor for me to get to cover that.
I'm glad I asked the question. It was not meant to be a negative. No. It was just trying to get a handle on it.
Yeah.
You're living it. I'm on the outside.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. You're you're in there to make a living.
I think that one of the things that I'm most proud of, like is the rapport that I have with all the coaches. I was going to give you an example. This isn't exactly the answer, but like I'm proud of the girls and women's sports coverage. I think our paper has been outstanding for quite some time. But I'm proud that I have a rapport with like all the different coaches. So I was gonna give you an example. One year, Jerry Quinn is the men's basketball coach at St. Thomas More.
He's been a guest here once.
Yeah, and he got put. He's been on it several times, but he got put on the Naismith ballot one year for the National Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, like that Larry Bird's in, you know. My boss at the time, Chuck Banning, was like, "Oh, can you call Jerry Quinn and do a story on him being on the Naismith ballot?" And I was like, "That's kind of like I know Jerry Quinn, like his daughters played at Montville and his sons played at Montville, so like I know him, but I never covered him per se. Like Gavin Keefe maybe more would cover St. Thomas More men's basketball because some of the players there go on to the D1 level, and so I was a little nervous, and I got his phone number and I called him, and he was like, "Hey Vic." And I was like, "Oh," like, and we just had like a normal conversation that you would have with a normal person, you know. It wasn't like scary or like, and, like, so I'm proud of the fact that, like, even though I don't say, you know, when we had more people on the staff like Mike DeMauro and Ned Griffin or those guys would go cover the football and the baseball and the basketball, and I would do more softball, girls basketball, but I have a rapport. Like I can call up Craig Parker from New London Boys Basketball and be like, "Hey, Chop," and talk to him and get his quotes about like what he thinks about something or cover a game. And they treat me just like the same as everyone else because like I think I've earned that over this is my 35th high school season. So like I've earned people's trust and you know, just like I must have done something right.
Well, that's what I say. I mean, you're certainly highly regarded in Southeastern Connecticut, and I'm sure beyond as well. And you mentioned Parker. He's a classmate of mine in London.
Oh, really?
And we played football together.
Yeah.
While he was on the basketball team, I was on the swim team. So
yeah.
we parted ways in the wintertime.
Yeah.
But he's been a guest here on a number of occasions.
Yeah. When he retired, I went to do a story on him, and we just sat at Mr. G's and like ate for like an hour and a half and just talked about everything and over lunch one day, and I wrote a story about him when he retired. But like I like all our, you know, local coaches. So. But I think I've established like a good relationship with most of them. So.
Yeah, well, you know, I think that in your line of work, I mean, you know, trust is a big item, and the coaches and players, they want to feel that they can express themselves. And you'll treat them fairly. I think that's a key consideration for.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be tough because sometimes the issues are not easy.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sure you do better than I.
Yeah.
But I think that's marvelous. I played football on Jimmy Bunacor's first team at Northern High School.
Oh, wow.
Back in 1970, I guess it was.
Mm-hmm.
With Tommy Major and Timmy Lewis, Kent Rays, Reggie Wheeler, and with that bunch of gentlemen. So, and I would argue that the 1968 team, when I was a freshman, was perhaps the best New London team ever. That was a powerhouse. Bob Weiss was the coach of that squad, and he had a good team at Fitch in the mid-'70s as well.
Yeah, I love Tommy Major.
But have you had opportunity to cover or write about the Red Sox or New York or the Celtics or sit in on at the big league level, or you've been primarily more local in nature
Well,
with your work? I suspect you have access, but whether or not you're writing.
yeah, my first time in a major league locker room was when I interned at the Hartford Courant between my junior and senior year at BU, and they wanted to give me an opportunity to do everything, like so I did like rowing and just everything. They gave me access to just do everything. I went to Cooperstown. Well, I went to Cooperstown every year for 25 years in a row for the Hall of Fame induction. But the sports editor at the Current then was like, you need to write about that. And it was the year that Yaz got inducted in '89 and Johnny Bench. So when I came back that year, I wrote a story and they put it on the sports front of the Hartford Courant. So that was neat. But they sent me to a Red Sox game. Tom Yantz from the Current was covering the Red Sox at the time, and they were playing the Blue Jays. And it was so Mookie Wilson had gotten traded from the Mets to the Blue Jays, and so he was like facing the Red Sox like kind of for the first time since the '86 World Series when he beat them, and it was my job to go and talk to Mookie Wilson. So it was like my first time in the professional baseball locker room, and Cito Gaston was the manager, and he couldn't have been more professional, and Mookie Wilson couldn't have been more professional. And then not a New York or Boston level, but the first 2 years that the Norwich Navigators played in Norwich, I was the beat writer. So I covered 142 games a season for 2 seasons in a row, 71 at home and 71 on the road.
You won on all the road mate games?
I covered every single game for 2 straight seasons.
Now, when you're doing that, are you traveling with the team or independent of the team?
No, independently, yeah. And we had a separate publication called the Gator Guide that came out every week, and we had like a different guy on the cover of the Gator Guide every week, and I would have to write like separate stories for the Gator Guide. And Chuck Banning, the former sports editor, he wasn't sports editor at the time, but he would design the pages of the Gator Guide. And so I had a lot of experience covering. It's still professional. They were the AA Yankees, and so I got to go to spring training in Tampa and hang out at Yankee minor league complex.
You must miss the Gators.
Well, it was their first year there, so it was kind of like a honeymoon. It was kind of neat. Like I must have gained like 40 pounds. You go to all the minor league stadiums and they have like 25-cent ice cream sandwich night, or like French fries in a helmet, or like whatever. I must have gained so much weight, like fried dough. But it really like I wouldn't have traded that. It was really, you retired a lot of times. Like you finish a series in Bowie and then you have to drive to Reading in the middle of the night through the Amish country,
Yeah.
But I met a lot of people, like Nomar Garcia Parra played for the Trenton Thunder then, and Enrico Petrocelli was with the Thunder he was with the Red Sox as an instructor. I met him. Vlad Guerrero Sr., who now it seems funny because there's a Vlad Guerrero Jr., but Vlad Guerrero Sr. was the right fielder for the Harrisburg Senators, and I never saw anyone with a better arm, and you got to see so many people that went on to the major leagues.
And did you have an eye for these players? Were watching them at that level that you could pick out and say this one's going to make the show?
Yeah, well, if you knew, like some of them were on the 40-man roster, like Matt Luke and Andy Fox from the.
They played with the Yankees, right?
They both played with the Yankees. Yeah, Mike Buddy went on to play with the Yankees. He was a pitcher, and he's the athletic director at Army now, and he was a really good guy. And yeah, there's some of them that conducted themselves like really professionally, and some that were just like goofy, So.
Speaking of West Point, have you had an opportunity to cover anything down there?
No, but I went to a game there, I think it was 2 years ago, and they put on a big big show. It's not a show. It's just what they do. It's like a Coast Guard. Well, the Coast Guard, but only on a bigger scale. Like before the games on Saturdays, they have a parade.
Oh, I know.
Like so every other Saturday, like half the Corps of Cadets marches every other Saturday. But it's like amazing. You have to get up really early to get there by like 9 in the morning or something. I think we
For a
left
noon
at like
kickoff,
5 in
you
the
do.
morning.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've been going down to West Point for 20 years.
Oh, okay.
It's
That was-
marvelous. I don't get tired of that.
It was a special thing. I brought a friend of mine, Don McKenzie, and we went. And first of all, there was a senior at Stonington High. Well, a girl from Stonington High School, Hannah Lamb. She was a senior at West Point. And I introduced my friend Don to her, and she shook his hand. She had her uniform on, and she shook his hand, and he was like, "Whoa, I'll never forget, like, that handshake." But also, they have these big links of a chain that George Washington put across the Hudson River to keep the British from coming, and it's kind of amazing. It's kind of an amazing place.
Oozes history.
Yeah, it's yeah.
And you get the helicopter flyovers, you
Yep.
get parachuters.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
You don't get those at Yukon games.
No, Coast Guard's pretty exceptional too, though.
Yeah.
It's just smaller, but it's pretty
Yeah.
exceptional also.
My eldest cousin retired as superintendent at the academy. So,
Oh, really? Oh, Olsen?
Yeah, Rube Olsen.
Okay, all right.
So I've got some connections there, and
Yeah.
one of his brothers actually works there now on the waterfront.
Okay.
So that's kind of neat. And with Rube, the local boy does well.
Yeah,
Go to Coast
yeah.
Guard and end up retiring as superintendent.
Yeah. You sit there and cover a game on September 11th or on Veterans Day, and you just realize, like you kind of take it for granted sometimes because you've been there so many times. Like, okay, I got to write this article, but you sit there and look at the Corps of Cadets like march out, or on homecoming there's the class of 1945, and they wheel them out on golf carts, and they wait, and it's really steeped in history also.
Yeah. Well, one thing that a guest that I had on this program a while back was a retired coach of the Coast Guard football, Bill George.
Yes.
And he was sitting right where you are. And what a terrific guy. I was introduced to him by Bobby Bono, who I grew up with, and he was an assistant basketball coach
Yes.
up at the academy.
Mm-hmm.
And we're watching a game, and he introduced me to the coach, and I asked him if he'd come on, and he did, and to promote this book, which you played a part in.
Yes. Yeah.
And he was just so thrilled to talk about your contributions to this. And perhaps you could share your interaction and what you did, and what motivated Coach Bill to do this, and because it's a little bit different for the type of book that it is.
What motivated him to write it?
Yeah,
I think it's an honor to his dad. Like I think like his dad died, and before he died, he was living at Bill's home, and Bill had a 4-year-old daughter who's a freshman at St. Bernard now, Lila, and his dad and his daughter were like best friends, and it just juxtaposed it the way it juxtaposed itself. It's a beautiful story that Casper, his dad, before he died, like kind of like all his whole life, they say your life flashes before your eyes, and he would just be like, well, what about this, from 1946, and Bill's mother had already passed away, and Casper would say, like, you got to unlock the back door, your mom's not going to be able to get in, and just like his whole life kind of flashed before his eyes a little bit. And Bill researched like exhaustively, went and researched the town where his dad grew up, and interviewed the people who lived there, and the relatives of the Casper's friends growing up, and it reads as sort of like the first half of every chapter is about the Coast Guard, and the second half of every chapter is sort of historical fiction from the town of Myers with his dad growing up. But it's all real people. Obviously, Bill wasn't there. He doesn't know what they said. But it's all based on real people. And what you don't realize, like when you're reading it, like, okay, it's his dad. So when it's talking about Abraham the grocer is Casper's father, that's Bill's grandfather. It's his family's history. So it's kind of like a love letter, you know, to his dad. Like he just was really adamant. Like, I got to get this book published. I got to get this book published. And we wrote to like almost 200 agents before we figured out how to get it published. We would just sit at his house and eat like tuna grinders and just write to agents. And like it was hard. It was hard work. He revised it a couple times. And so my relationship with him is, so he coached there for 21 years, and I covered the Coast Guard football team the entire time that he coached. So
Wow.
I was the beat writer for every single game of his career. So on Wednesdays, they don't have it anymore, but on Wednesdays they had a football luncheon. So it was at the Officers Club. So it would be Bill, the sports information director at the time, Jason Southard, me, like if there was a writer from the Norwich Bulletin, or like maybe the radio broadcaster for Coast Guard, you know, would go sometimes, and we could pick a player that we wanted to interview, or if somebody had a good game, if there was a kid whose father played there, or you know, whatever we wanted to write about, that kid would come to lunch, and we would all have lunch together, maybe like 5 to 10 people, like every Wednesday. So for 21 seasons, I had lunch with Bill every Wednesday during football season. And so we just like developed like a friendship, I guess, you know, and
And why
now,
don't they do that anymore? That sounds to me like a terrific tradition.
yeah, I don't know, it was terrific. And Bill would always say like, oh, I gotta have a salad today. I'm getting too fat. I gotta have a salad, and he'd come back with like a salad like this, like an 18-pound salad. But we had a great time, and he would always say, oh, this is off the record, and be like, oh my God, okay. So he was terrific at telling you stuff off the record, but it just like I covered them for the whole time. So I'm not sure if it was his last year or the year before his last year when he was like, well, it started before that, and he said, I need someone to copy edit my book. Do you know anyone who does stuff like that? And I was like, you know what I do for a living, right? Like, and he's like, no, I don't want it to be you, because I don't want it to like come between us. Like, what if you think something needs to get changed, and I don't want to get changed, and I don't want us to like have a fight, and you're like, I don't want this to come between us. I want, you know, like us to stay friends. And I was like, Bill, like that's what I do for a living. Like, what are you talking, you know? So he ended up giving me the manuscript. It was the very first manuscript that he gave me was in an old New England football conference, like a little laptop carrier, like it was like this old beat up like a suitcase kind of thing. And he came and he gave it to me, and then I started reading it, and it just like evolved from there. But I've read it. I think I'm up to like 9 times, and I've cried every single time. Maybe not the last time, because by then you're just like, oh, we got to get this ready to get to print, you know. But I read it like every single time. It moves me in like a different way that it didn't the last time. Like every single time, it's just like written so compellingly and so like from the heart. And I think it's just a really good story. It's written differently than, it's not like, you know, like I don't know, like John Grisham, but it's the story. I challenge you to find a better story.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean,
Yeah.
I wanted to read the
Excellent.
book before I had him sit here,
Yeah.
because I wanted to have a feel for what's going on. I was very impressed, and I mean the interaction between family. New York, where the family, the World War II, and the impact of war and sending these young men overseas, and for most of them, they hadn't left the area.
Right. Yeah, and there's
I
like,
mean, this is all brand new. They're being sent to Europe in a war. It's,
yeah, and it really like relates to it relates to anyone who's ever had someone leave and go into the military, into a war. Like my dad was in Vietnam, you know, and he was like 19 and he went to Vietnam. It's the same thing. Like these like this one character in the book was too shy to ever talk to a girl, and then he goes, you know, he gets sent to World War II, and but I don't know, and it relates to anyone who's ever had ever been a caregiver to like a parent or a relative who's had like hospice in their house and an ailing older relative, and it relates to the, you know, the football part, like the military part, like we need to beat Kings Point, you know, like it's there's so many different. One agent we sent it to wrote back and was like, that sounds like there's kind of a lot going on, and it really is, but it's all good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not only that, but I mean the perseverance of his wife. I mean, with everything going on, it's tough being I think a coach's spouse.
Yeah.
And because the amount of time that's demanded of a coach, and then you have his dad in the house.
Yeah, and she had a job. She worked at Pfizer.
And as you mentioned, the daughter who's adopted at 4 years old, and they did that a little older. It wasn't like they were in their early 20s.
No, yeah.
Where, you know, a lot of folks have their children young.
Yeah.
Here they introduce a child into their household when they're quite a bit older.
Yes,
and all these different dynamics and trying to make everything work, and it's
and they had to find care for Bill's dad within their home, so they had a caregiver like come in and just sit with them all day and like watch TV and talk and sing songs and different stuff like that until they got home from work.
Yeah.
But yeah, then Bill would get home at like 10 o'clock at night after watching film, you know, and then like Lila would be like, oh, I want to stay up till Daddy gets home, and then Casper would say something like completely off the wall, and Lila would be like, what? You know, and it just like the interaction is just like spot on. And plus, I knew his dad and his mom, so like just the like the picture that you get of it is just like so true to life, you know, like it just captures like a family relationship. Like there's nothing fake. There's no fake dialogue in there that you get like, you know, from certain things. It's like real. It's real people and a real story.
And one of the things too, at least being a local guy, that there are people in this book that I know.
Yes.
That are referenced different points. That I know him, I know her, and this and that. Superintendent, or the coach, or people I grew up with. It was it brought it to life.
Yeah, and a little behind the scenes, like at Coast Guard, a few behind the scenes, like how things work, like the personal physical fitness test, and you know.
Well, it's different. You're not at UConn. You're not at Conn College or Mitchell College. I mean, this is more like, you know, you're at West Point or Annapolis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then trying to beat a team, and then maybe they like Coast Guard has very stringent rules, you know, for their athletes. I'm sure all the military academies do, but I think like I don't know. I don't want to speak out of school, but like I think they have like one of the most stringent like application, you know. You're an offensive lineman. Oh, well, before you come here, you have to lose 40 pounds. Well, the hell with that. I'm not coming there if I have to do that. You know, it's hard. It's a hard place to go.
Is one who's been to a number of games at West Point. I've been to a number of Army-Navy games. As a matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, I've got tickets to see Navy play Notre Dame down at MetLife.
Oh, that's exciting.
But my point being is that the physical size on the line is you can see it from anywhere in the stadium that the Notre Dame guys are, and the Academy guys are
210.
well, they're not 210, but
Yeah.
you don't see a
Yeah.
lineup of 300-pounders.
Yeah.
I think they've relaxed some of those regulations.
Yeah.
But after postseason, they've got to take the weight off.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they can pack it on and leave it on.
No, because they have to get commissioned into the United States military.
Same thing with height. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
which is a bit of a challenge with their basketball squads. I mean,
Right.
you don't see any 7-footers playing for Coast Guard.
Because they won't fit on the boat.
That's right.
They won't fit on the Eagle.
So, but it's. Has this given you any urge to write a book of your own of any type, or has anybody asked you to either co-author or ghostwrite something for them?
I haven't really been. I don't know. I did a lot of stuff with Bill that I found like enjoyable. Like I loved the whole editing process of the book, and then also what's it called? We had to send out like this whole package with telling people. Like a little prospectus, like a little outline, like, oh, here's who you can market this to, and here's the author's bio, and here's a sample chapter. And I found that I really enjoyed the whole process. I enjoyed, like, they call it querying the agents, like writing the agents' letters. I kind of liked it, but I don't know, like, a lot of people, when I tell stories, I always like, you should write a book, but I don't know if I would be able to do it or to have time, or if anyone would ever read it. And like what a hard process it is to try to get it published. You just can't. Well, I guess a lot of people self-publish things on Amazon now, and you could always
self-publishing. But I mean, I don't know how wide the readership is.
Yeah,
I understand that Admiral Stowe's played a role in helping to get this.
Yes, her autobiography was published by the same company, Kohler Books, and Bill just happened to run into her at a football game one day, and he was telling her, like, I wrote this, we can't get it published, and she was like, I think you should approach this book company, and look at what an exceptional job they did at the cover, and it's really professional. So like I looked at Sandy Stowe's book, and I said to Bill, like, this, and he was leaning toward it anyway. I'm like, look how good this looks. Like, this is sharp. I think the way it looks is like pretty sharp. Like, I think if you walk by that on a bookshelf, it might be something that you picked up and would be like, what is this?
Yeah. Well, with your work at the academy, would be football. As I mentioned earlier, I enjoy watching Mitchell Kahn, Coast Guard athletics, to try to integrate and get the New London and broader Southeastern Connecticut population interested in quality D3 athletics.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're missing out.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stories, but like, I don't know. We have to the high school kids. We cover the high schools, and those are local, and I get the colleges are local, but the players aren't. Maybe, but there are some great stories. Like Gavin Keefe just covered the Coast Guard and Conn College men's soccer game yesterday, and the goalie for Conn College is the kid that when he was a freshman, he was the backup goalie for Conn, and they won the national championship in penalty kicks. But he's been an expert his whole career at penalty kicks. So now he's a senior. Last night they play Coast Guard, and he saves a penalty kick. Like, the coach is like, he's like, so, but he's the starting goalie now. But when he was a freshman, he never was the starter, except for when they went to penalty kicks, the coach would put him in. So they won the national championship with him as the goalie.
But a point I'm driving at here we
There's
have
some good
in New
stories.
London
Yeah.
a national champion
Yes.
soccer team,
Yes.
and nobody knows it.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're really a soccer aficionado.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like it's a big deal that
Yeah.
New London got behind and was up there.
Right. And the coaches are local people. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
Chris Parsons at Coast Guard is a local person. His daughter played at East Lyme. You know, it's local people. Rob Brule, I think, still coaches at College for women's soccer. He was the Waterford girls soccer coach for a long
He's
time.
first selectman now.
We have like local ties on all those college teams.
Yeah. I mean, a number of years ago when Glenn Miller had a nice run at Con with the basketball team, toward the end of that, when they were getting at the end of the season and into the tournaments and stuff, then you'd see everybody and their brother come out.
Yeah.
But it would take almost a monumental effort to get people jacked up. Although I must say, this past year, Con made the conference tournament, and it was a good crowd for that ball game. And there were some locals that made their way out.
Yeah, there's certain sports that.
And Travis Musoley's done a nice job with baseball at Mitchell. He's moved on now to Avery Point.
Yes.
But, and what Bidwell did at Avery Point as well. I mean, there's just a lot of talent and a lot of good things.
Yeah. There's a lot of good stories. Like I said, the list never gets any smaller that we have things to write about.
Well, it's been it's really interesting, and we've got enough stuff. We could talk another 2 or 3 hours here. I'll have to have you back here. I hope that you've enjoyed yourself enough to say when Martin calls, I'll have to carve out another hour here.
Of course.
But we've run out of time here. So, is there anything that you'd like to share before we part ways for the evening that maybe we didn't touch on?
I just wanted to say that I couldn't be prouder than to have been appointed the sports editor at the Day. This is my 35th high school season at the Day, and we have 4 and sometimes 5 people on our staff, but the 4 people who are on our staff all the time have all been there for over 30 years, and we just we care about everything that we do, and we're embedded in it, and we do the best that we can all the time. And I couldn't be prouder to be the sports editor of our section, and all the things that we do. We have the game day. We do the live stream the games, and we still pick the all area teams for the All-Stars. And to follow Chuck Banning was the sports editor before me, and he was just the truest players coach in every sense of the word. He was like Joe Torre of the Day sports section. He just made it look so easy, and now I know that it is not easy. But I couldn't be prouder than to follow him in his footsteps, and then also to be the sports editor of the people that are on our staff, and I think it's an exceptional place to work.
Well, that's terrific. Well, again, I want to thank you for carving out an hour, and we'll have you back and revel in more stories. I'm loving this. This is terrific, and you've been a wonderful guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marty.
Folks, you've been watching City Focus. Next week, I'll have Tony D'Angelo on, and we'll discuss a little politics and the upcoming presidential election and whatever else we decide to delve into. So with that, we'll say good night and see you next week. Good night.